I know it's June, but this is my April wrap up. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now I'm going to be doing my long overdue April wrap up, and I'm sorry that it took me so long to film this, mostly because I was just too lazy, and April wasn't a spectacular reading month for me. Like, it wasn't something that I wanted to show off and to talk about, mostly because I didn't read as much as I would have liked, and also the books I did pick out weren't stellar reads, but I do have some that are really good and I want to highlight in this wrap up. Like all my wrap ups, I don't talk about every single book that I have read in the month, mostly because I'll be sitting on this floor forever if I do. But if you always want to check out the reads that I am picking up, you can follow me on Goodreads, or you can add me as a friend on Goodreads. Links are always down below for my social media. But let's get started on some of the highlights for this month. So the first book that I want to talk about is this one called How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams. And now this one, I wasn't expecting it to be as good as I thought it would be, mostly because I never heard of Denise Williams before as an author, and I actually never really saw this book much on Instagram when it was first released, but it's a really popular novel according to Goodreads because it has over 10,000 ratings. It's already at a 3.89, which is a really high rating for me in terms of like ratings. This one I actually really enjoyed and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's about our main heroine who's getting back into like the dating scene, but she definitely struggles with a lot of trauma that did happen in her previous relationship. Her previous relationship, it was a very dark time for her, in a dark period. Her boyfriend was actually emotionally abusive and mentally abusive towards her, and has definitely left her feeling very vulnerable and someone who struggles with a lot of the stress and anxiety that comes with ending a relationship with such an abusive boyfriend. But what happens is that her friends actually encourage her to go out for a night of fun, and that's where she meets our main hero, who is there, and they immediately hit it off. They feel a strong connection with each other and they're having a great time, and everything seems perfect until the next day she goes to work and she realizes that he is a new person at work, and it could cause a lot of trouble for her career-wise because workplace relationships are still a little bit taboo. And this is kind of like the book where what happens when your ex and your abusive ex comes back into the picture. It read really easily and I highly recommend you to check it out. So the next book that I did read was actually a historical romance published by Berkeley Romance, and this one is called A Lady's Formula for Love by Elizabeth Everett, and this one is a bodyguard romance. Our heroine is a very brilliant scientist. She loves science. She just loves education, knowledge, and experiments and things like that, and she has secretly founded an organization for women who want to go into STEM and who wants to study STEM more, and she's working on the secret mission for the crown, and she meets this officer who is our hero, who is in charge to protect her because mysterious incidents are happening and she is being put into danger while she's trying to solve this mystery. And it's like a really fun, entertaining read. I definitely liked how gruff and like grumpy our main hero was versus our heroine, who's kind of eccentric, because all she cares about is her experiments and not about her well-being, and it's our hero who is always kind of like pulling her back and telling her to calm down. This one I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I did read was The Jigsaw Man by Nadine Matheson. Now this one is one of my first thrillers of 2021. I was mostly intrigued by this novel, mostly because it was about a killer who likes to kill people and then chop them up into different pieces, and then afterwards he gets caught, he's put into jail, whatever. But suddenly someone out there is mimicking him and like kind of stealing his thunder and spotlight, and now our lead investigators are trying to figure out who this killer is. This one is actually written by a Black author, and then she actually wrote our main character to be a Black detective as well. So if you're looking for diverse thrillers, definitely check this one out. I absolutely loved how creepy and thrilling this book was. It's definitely a longer thriller. It's like around 400 pages to 500 pages. I forget how many pages it was, but it definitely keeps you interested and intrigued as more bodies keep piling up, and you get to read this book from a multitude of perspectives, so you're always wondering who you can trust and who is a reliable narrator. And then also our main killer in jail is so dark and twisted. It definitely leaves you a little bit spooked. This one, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I do want to talk about is actually a children's graphic novel that was actually gifted to me from Scholastic Canada a couple months back. It's been like 7 months, but it took me a long time to get to this graphic novel. I don't know why, but this one's called Twins and it's by Varian Johnson. Now this one is about literally twins. They are two polar opposites. We have one who is very extroverted. She has a lot of friends. She leads the group and things like that. Then we have our other heroine who is quieter. She's an introvert. She likes to study. She likes to, do her things that she's comfortable with, and she doesn't like to step out of the box. But what happens is that they go into middle school and they realize that their schedules for the first time since like they were born are completely different. And now we have our introverted heroine who is suddenly at a loss without her older sister, and her older sister seems like she is pulling away from her, and she is trying to deal with these like differences that are happening and how they are being separated. I thought that this one was extremely heartbreaking at some points because you can tell that these sisters are struggling with their own identities, because as twins they feel like that they are always known to be twins and never for themselves and their own personalities. And then also what happens in this plot is that these two sisters actually run against each other to become class president. So if you really like graphic novels, if you like to read about social issues and middle grade issues, definitely recommend you to check this one out. I gave this one a solid 3 out of 5 stars. I think the biggest problems that I did have this year so far is that majority of my most anticipated reads have been duds and have been a 3 out of 5 stars or less than 3 out of 5 stars. So it definitely makes me kind of disappointed in myself. But the next book that I didn't want to talk about is Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. I absolutely love the first 2 books in the Brown Sisters series, and they were so fun. They were so addicting to read. This one definitely read as smooth as the other books from Talia Hibbert. I absolutely love Talia's writing. I think she does an excellent job at storytelling and captivating you into a fluffy romance. This one tells the story of our third Brown sister who is different from the rest because she doesn't have her life together, and she's kind of known as like the failure in the family because she doesn't have a specific career path that she followed or like, a subject of study in university. She always feels like the failure in the family and her life is a complete mess. And one of the main issues that she realizes quickly earlier on is that she finds something and she doesn't stick to it. She doesn't have the ability to stick to it because she's afraid of commitment, and she is kind of digging herself in a hole in that sense. What happens is that she meets our main character who is the opposite of her, who works really hard and really diligently, type A personality all the way, and this is definitely an opposites attract romance. What I didn't like about this book was that I didn't like Eve herself. I felt like that all she did was have a little sob story about herself and feel bad about herself and constantly complain about herself and just like keep kicking herself down repeatedly while also not making the correct moves to kind of change who she is and self-reflect. So I don't really like characters who are typically described to be as a hot mess because I don't think that those characters are really cute. And it might stem from like a personal thing because I don't consider myself very type A. I consider myself type B. And if you were to ask any of my friends here on booktube or any of my friends in real life, you'll realize that most of my conversations with them is about me complaining about how my life is a mess and things like that. So maybe it's a me issue and not me wanting to see myself in a book, and that's why I hate these books. But this one just didn't connect with it as much, although I really appreciated the romance between our characters. Our main hero was definitely very vulnerable to our heroine because he kind of told her about why he wanted to make his business to be kind of like a bed and breakfast business instead of making something else. So I like that. So this one, average read, gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Now, the next book that I did read was an author that I kind of gave up on, or I wanted to give up on because I didn't like her first novel, which is called The Roommate and it's by Rosie Denon. And now I read her second book called The Intimacy Experiment. And this one follows our main female heroine that was introduced in the first book. And she was actually like a sex worker in the sense that she performed in adult films. So she's very sex positive, and she actually becomes like this talk occur about sexual nature and exploration and educator. And she goes to these conferences to talk about sex positive things, and she's definitely like a feminist, and she really cares about having healthy relationships and making sure that other people have healthy relationships. So our main hero is actually a rabbi, and he is in charge with trying to make sure that a lot of the youth kind of join into like the faith of like the Jewish community. And then afterwards, this is kind of like their working relationship turned into a romance. What I liked about this book obviously is about how sex positive it was, because I feel like that's always like something that we should talk about and be, you know, very very raw about and not to be ashamed about. What I didn't really like was that this one lacked a little bit of romance for me. I felt like it was more of our main female heroine trying to figure out her faith, trying to figure out if she wants to go back to the community that kind of shunned her for being different and for being sexually active. And it didn't really feel like it was a strict romance. It felt like more of like just a Jewish romance that talked more about religion than the romance, if you understand what I'm saying. So this one, it's not like I didn't like it like The Roommate, because The Roommate, I just didn't like it because I didn't like the characters. But this one, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars for the plot. So the next book that I did read was a young adult novel, and this one's called A Taste for Love by Jennifer Yen. Jennifer Yen is a debut novel this year. She wrote a book, highly anticipated it, really wanted to read it, and I finally got to read it 2 months after publication date. So this one is definitely an enemies to lovers romance. It features our main heroine, who is the daughter of this baker in the community. Everybody goes to the Asian bakery for her mom's buns, for her mom's desserts and treats and things like that. What's special about her family business is that half of it is a bakery and the other half is a Chinese restaurant run by her dad. So the family is very busy with the family business, and she helps out on the weekends. So you'll get to like read about a lot of delicious foods, and it definitely made me want to go visit a Asian bakery very soon to get me the buns that they described. But regardless, what happens is that our main character is single, and then afterwards our mom wants to set her up with a lot of like well-known boys in the neighborhood that is coming from like a good family and has like a chance of a good life because they study really hard and that they're already accepted into all these like colleges. But what happens is that our main heroine actually falls for her enemy, and basically our hero is very gruff, he's very insulting, he's very quiet, but they have these special times together where they are constantly challenging each other. And he actually enters into the baking competition that her mom actually hosts, to give scholarship money to students, and they spend a lot more time with each other, and this is kind of their romance. I thought it was very enjoyable. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The reason why I took a 1 star off was that in the end, I felt like everything was like super rushed, and I was like, what is going on? Like, we need to dial it back and take a step back for a bit. But overall, I still really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to more Jennifer's work. So the next book that I do want to talk about is another YA novel. This one is from one of my favorite authors in YA. She's very unknown, like she's underrated for sure. Her name is Jennifer Honeyborn, and the book that I read from her was When Life Gives You Demons. And now Jennifer is actually from the same province as I am. She's Canadian. She writes books for Soon Reads. So definitely go check out her books because I really enjoy them, even though her ratings on Goodreads are typically very low. This one follows our main heroine, who is a high school student, and on the weekends she actually trains with her uncle to become an exorcist. And there are actually demons and possessed people in this world, and she is getting her feet in and dipping her feet in to really, you know, expel these demons from these people. But what happens is that we realize that her mom has actually ran away and disappeared, and that there might actually be more to the disappearance than what her uncle has let on, and that there may be something lurking in the community that is growing stronger and stronger, and that could cause the community to kind of be disrupted by these demons. So it was definitely a very action-packed book, and it left me feeling really like upset a lot of the times because our main heroine is clearly upset about her mother's like, you know, leaving and disappearance. So I really enjoyed it and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So other books that I would like to quickly mention is that I did read some manga this month, and I read The Way of the House Husband, mostly because The Way of the House Husband was actually premiered on Netflix, and I absolutely binged all the mini episodes that they had. I loved it so much. It was so funny, and the manga was absolutely like similar to the series. So if you want to watch the TV show, watch the TV show, because the manga is exactly the same. But regardless, I read volumes like I think like 1 to 4 on Kindle Unlimited, and I absolutely enjoyed it. So definitely recommend you to check out that series. But anyways, that is it for all the books I did want to mention that I read in April. As always, check me out on Goodreads, add me on Goodreads, follow me on Instagram because I'm more active on there anyways, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.